Hello. Sorry about that technical difficulty there a few minutes ago. When you have to repeat something and you can't remember, I'll probably think I've said something twice or not at all during this one because I essentially spent 10 minutes talking to myself. So, Instagram for small businesses. If you're not already on there and using it, you're kind of already behind. So don't delay in deciding whether you need it or not. You do need it. Every demographic is on there now, which happens with every social media platform eventually. Kids go over first and it's seen as this is just for kids, this is just for teenagers. And then eventually teenagers become young adults. And when each demographic moves over, another one follows. And eventually, especially if you're owned by Facebook, you pull all those different age groups over. So Instagram can be used for loads of different types of businesses, whether you're business to customer, whether you're business to business, whether you're aiming at young people, older people, male, female, rural, urban, your audience is definitely on Instagram. Some of them more than others, but that doesn't mean that they can't be reached. So actually, if you're aiming at, we'll say you have a product or a service that's aimed at women over 45. It's a much smaller amount of those type of customers than, say, women in their 20s or 30s who are on Instagram. But she's also following a lot less accounts. She's also not as distracted by so many different things on her phone that you could actually grab her attention with good content and reach her really well. So just because there's less of that type of customer doesn't make it harder. That can actually be an opportunity, because if a platform is flooded with a certain type of customer, okay, you're guaranteed that your customer's there, and that's kind of the proof some people are looking for. But if all of them are there, then all of your competitors are there trying to reach them. And you are just trying to get your content seen, hold their attention, get them to consider what it is that you're talking about, get to know your brand, and eventually purchase. So it's a relationship that takes time. And it's a platform that has evolved and changed. So Instagram was very much for the picture perfect, beautiful aesthetic. And it is still more like that than other platforms. But since the introduction of stories, there's another side of yourself, your product, your brand that you can show on Instagram, and it still fits absolutely fine. And that is in stories. And even the feed, to be honest, has become less picture perfect, because I think the community in general just got sick of that fake photoshopped, polished, filtered image that we all know is not real. But it's okay to have some of your content perfected, because there's a perception that you want to give people. Now, if the perception is that everything is perfect all of the time, we know that's fake. But also, if everything is very rough and ready and crap all the time, that's not a great perception either. So there's a balance to be had between the rough around the edges content, behind the scenes kind of stuff, and your proper polished content. So I would keep the polished stuff for the feed, and then the stories is where you can kind of do more storytelling, literally. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is just a really quick run around what the Instagram screen looks like when you open the app. So if you're familiar with using it yourself, most of this won't come as a surprise to you. But for some people who are only embracing this for their business for the first time, they may not be avid users of the app and therefore not know their way around it. So just to make it clear for later when I talk about different features. So on the top left of the screen, you have a little camera icon, which opens your camera on your phone. Now, Instagram is only to be done from your phone. Yes, you can see it on Instagram.com on your computer, but this is designed and intended for mobile use. And the more you try and fight against that, the more it won't go your way. So you need to use your mobile phone for your Instagram. So on the top left, that little camera icon opens the camera on your phone. It often opens the selfie camera when you're not expecting it, and you have 14 chins, but it happens as all. And you can flip it to be the outward facing camera or the selfie camera. That is where you go to create your Instagram stories. Okay, Instagram stories then are those little bubbles across the top of the screen on your phone, and you slide towards the left to move along all the various stories. If you play the first one and don't do anything else, it will automatically go into the next one and the next one and the next one. Then on the top right, you've got a little icon that looks like a TV with a lightning bolt on it. And that is for Instagram TV. Now, I'm not going to go deep on Instagram TV in this Facebook Live because this is really just kind of an introductory thing. And Instagram TV is a little bit more advanced. It's only out since last year, and it has quite low viewership and quite low amount of content being published on there, even by the big players, which I would see as a reason to jump on there. Because at the moment, it's not overcrowded, and it's not something where you're trying to compete with somebody with millions of views every day. It's just for longer form video content on Instagram. So the videos in the feed can only be 60 seconds maximum. So if you've got something longer than that, it needs to be amazing content, because it's very hard to keep people's attention. So if you've got something that you would like to live longer than 24 hours, like stories do, if it's in a format that's longer than 60 seconds, so it doesn't fit the feed, it depends on what your business is and what kind of content you can produce. But that is what that button is. And so many people don't even know that it's there. Facebook and Instagram are going to push it this year and are going to be moving it down to where your stories are, trying to encourage you to come up there and watch those Instagram TV videos. They are also going to be putting things in your feed that are the first 60 seconds, and then to watch more, you're going to have to move into Instagram IGTV. To the right of that, you have what is your inbox. And your inbox, I mean, there's an inbox in every platform, right? And it's very much just your private messages. But when someone comments on a story, that comment goes to the person's inbox. So you publish a story and somebody says, oh, that's cool, or just a thumbs up, or has a question for you, or whatever. Instead of it being a public comment like on a post, it comes into you as a message, which I think is fantastic, because people want that one-to-one relationship with you, even a brand, okay? And people are more willing to comment when they know it's just going to you than if it's going to be a public feed. Because the way that social media has gone, when you comment publicly on something, you attract all sorts of trolls. You know, you'll have random friend requests. So something is published on a newspaper's social media, and it's an article and it's quite divisive, or, you know, somebody has an opinion on it and they voice their opinion in the comments, they can get attacked personally, you know. So people are really reluctant now to comment publicly on things, sometimes because they don't want to attract strangers' attention, sometimes because they don't want their boss to know they're online, sometimes because they don't want Auntie Mary joining in the conversation. No offense to anybody's Auntie Mary, that's just a name I use. But there are lots of reasons why people have become less public with how they engage with brands. So this idea of viewing your content on what is quite an intimate experience when it's just their mobile device, and then knowing that when they leave a comment of any sort, that it's going just to you, and that when you reply, you're replying just to them. The user really, really likes that. And that's another great reason to be on stories, because even if it is just a thumbs up today, or a haha, or, you know, nice job, whatever it is that comes through to you and you respond, that's the beginning of a chat relationship that can end up in a sale. So that is across the top of your screen, your stories camera, your IGTV, and your inbox. And they're teeny tiny little icons, and some people don't realize what they are. The other thing about the inbox on Instagram is that it's really the only place that you can hit a share button under somebody's story or post and send it on to somebody. And it's back to this thing of it's mimicking the behavior of the users. So on Facebook, if you look at your own behavior, I share some things to my, my timeline. But for that, again, I screenshot or I privately share in Messenger a lot more stuff where I just handpick 2 or 3 friends that will find that thing funny. Or, say it's an article about some particular niche of parenting. And I think, oh, that's what me and that mum were talking about a few days ago. And I'll send her that. I don't necessarily want to share it for all of my friends list to see. So people are getting picky about which pieces of content they want to have in which conversations. So we've moved our attention away from news feeds. It's really important to remember that, into watching stories and having one-to-one messenger conversations with each other and with brands. And that's why stories and messenger and WhatsApp and Instagram messages are such a priority for Facebook and Instagram this year. So it has been announced that all those messaging platforms are going to synchronize better. It's not going to become one big thing. But if you see something on Facebook, you'll be able to send it to someone on WhatsApp. If you, likewise with Instagram, those 3 private inboxes will sync better. And as a business, that's great because it means that the user gets to decide how they're sharing the stuff and where. So underneath the stories then is your feed, which is just like every social media platform. You scroll mindlessly until something stops your thumb. And it's made up of photos and videos. They are best in square format. Now, there's lots of different shapes to remember here. Square is best for Instagram feed. But this, one second, this is how you should publish to stories. So you need to hold your phone like on the top where it's long ways. It's what we call vertical or portrait mode. And that is how you should have your phone when you're taking photos or recording videos for stories or going Instagram live, because it fills their screen. The bottom one, where you flip the phone to get a wider angle, you'll get more in, it's a wider shot. It's how we were always told we should record video. And this is really counterintuitive for people to go and do things in vertical. But it is so important that you create the content in the way that it's going to be consumed, okay? So if you record in landscape, horizontally, like the one on the bottom, when you publish it to stories, it will only come up in the middle of the screen. And you're already dealing with people on a handheld device with a few inches of a screen. So you really don't need to be damaging yourself further by only filling the middle of their screen. And what Instagram have noticed is that it's not that they won't put that stuff in front of people. It's that people don't watch it to the end. They don't consume it as well as when it was done in vertical. IGTV that I mentioned has to be vertical. What I'm seeing now is people publishing landscape content with a caption at the start saying, turn your phone, and an arrow. Now, I think if you have to give your viewer instructions, you're already losing, okay? If you have to say, turn your phone, it's not that they won't turn their phone ever. It's not that they don't know how to turn their phone. It's that you're asking them to do something to suit you. And you haven't done what you were supposed to do to suit them. So if this is how people hold their phone all the time, you know how annoying it is when something makes you do that. It's not the end of the world, and you do it occasionally, but only if the content is worth flipping your phone for. So it's like, when a website is a little bit slow to load, it's not that you would never ever wait for a website to load, but you will kind of huff and roll your eyes for that second that it took to load. And a lot more often, you will just hit the back button. And they'll do that with your video if you're asking them to flip it. So if you're going to the bother of creating content, being brave enough to maybe put yourself in front of the camera, all this kind of stuff, you want them to watch it, right? You don't want to be that thing that they swipe past or hit a back button on. So that's why you've got to record it this way, not this way. Now, the same piece of content does not fit all platforms then. Because if you've created it this way, if you publish that, say it's a great video, and you've got it on IGTV, and you've got it on broken down into snippets on stories, and you've put it in feed, and it's flying on Instagram, and you want to put it on YouTube, well, it's not going to look right on YouTube, because on your screen, it's going to have those horrible bars either side and your vertical contents here in the middle. So square will fit both in that it won't be awful, but it's also not filling the screen. And really the only ideal scenario, if you're making video, is to have two devices and record in both. And that is the only way that you can be sure you will have content that fits all platforms then. Okay, so the number one question I'm asked about Instagram is, what will I say? What will I post if I don't have food, if I don't have fitness models, if I don't have something that people automatically associate with Instagram? So the kind of content that works really well is stuff with humans in it. And that is true for every online platform, not even just social media. But if you put people in your content, it performs much better. Now, I could write out all these tips and post them, and you won't read them. I could just share slides all the time here and point to things and talk you through it, but you won't make it to the end. When I flip between slides and myself sharing the information is the same, but because you're hearing it from a human and seeing it from a human, it makes more sense. It's why I still deliver so much training in person, is that people want to deal with people. Now, when you're marketing online, you need to keep the people in the content. If you remove all humanity from your online marketing, it will fail, okay? If you automate too much into bots and this automatically happens if they click there, they get this, they get that, you take all tone and all cop on out of what you're doing. So if you schedule everything, you don't know if something is going to happen in the news that's going to make one of those funny memes distasteful in the context of something that is about to happen. You don't know what's around the corner. And you need to keep your eye on context as much as content. So you need to keep the people in the content. Now, stories are a great way of including people who are not supermodels, who are not, picture perfect all of the time. And even in the news feed, if you have a product, get decent photos of the product. But to be honest, even great product photography by itself in my newsfeed doesn't make me stop scrolling. It's the product being used by a person, how it will be used, that makes so much difference. A little bit of movement, if it's a product that's used with your hands, let me see that. Let me see it in use. Let me see a person using the product. There's a balance to be had between perfect stock photography and going and getting your own stuff done. And it's things like the algorithms on all these platforms even read the metadata of an image. So they know what date an image was taken. They know if the pixels in the image have hit the internet a million times before. So even if you go and buy great stock photography, and you put a caption on it and you think you're creating content, but actually it's not original, and the algorithm knows that. Whereas if it's something that you did that's original and fresh, it recognizes that this hasn't been posted loads of times before. In fact, this image or video was only created recently. People will probably want to see it more than they want to see something that just looks like a catalog, okay? So while you do want professional looking, polished content on your profile, so that if I visit your Instagram profile and scroll back through, I get a sense of what your brand is about. Is there a certain color palette? Is there a certain theme? That I get a sense for the aesthetic of your brand. Watch your own Instagram behavior. How many times a day do you actually visit someone's profile and go back through their grid? You probably only do it on competitors. And That's not how the user, the Joe Soap user, your end consumer, uses Instagram. Some of them do, and occasionally you will have reason to pop over to someone's profile and scroll back through. But Instagram will tell you at the top of your screen how many profile visits you've had in the last 7 days. Check it out and see, is it worth the effort of having everything consistently perfect for the amount of people who come over and see it like that? It's usually not worth it. What is worth it is making great content that hits news feeds, making great stories that get watched, making IGTV content that will sit there and be one of the first good performers on what is essentially a new platform. So take photos, take videos, edit them, get someone to edit them, get some professional photos and videos done. But always bear in mind that this is not going to be the fix-all for your business. Getting professional photos or videos done is not where the job ends. It's then what you do with them. What platform are they going on? So ask a photographer to take stuff in vertical, square, and landscape so that the same product image will work on various platforms. Ask a videographer, now gently and say please, and make sure they're sitting down when you ask them to film stuff in portrait. In short form, really short form, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, maximum 60 seconds. But get stuff done in all the different formats so that you have a body of content you can play with, okay? Very much like I always advise on Facebook, avoid text over images as much as is possible. It's not completely banned, but people don't stop scrolling and read an essay on a post. They just don't. The algorithm doesn't give a good reach because they know that the user doesn't really like it, okay? So even the news feeds that it does reach, and this counts for Facebook and Instagram. I've screenshotted lots in the last week, and I'm going to put a thing together. And the only thing that's holding me back from putting it together is that I don't want to shame the brands that I've screenshotted who are doing this. I can tell 100% that the content was made for a newspaper ad or a flyer, okay? So it's really, really text heavy. Now, it's got lovely fonts, it's got lovely color schemes, it's laid out really well for the format it was intended, which is a newspaper or a flyer, where you've put it in somebody's hand and they're going to read it. But you're not putting it in my hand when you're putting it on social media. You're part of a scrolling newsfeed where you're hoping to catch my attention. And you won't catch my attention with something that my brain knows that's going to take me ages to read all that, and it probably won't even be relevant to me. So I don't stop scrolling. Now, it's a total waste of putting that kind of content on social media if everybody's just going to scroll past. If it's something that's really important to somebody, they will kind of screenshot it, save it to their phone, take note of, yeah, I must come back to that, or stick that in my diary, or, you know, that's where I need to order that or inquire about that course or whatever. But the same information in video format would be so much more effective. The most effective would be this, a human to a camera explaining the thing. That would be the most, and then caption the video with subtitles, because 90% of people don't have their sound switched on their mobile. So you can use the information, the product offering, whatever it is, but please do not try and make what should be a flyer work on social media. It just doesn't work. People try to make it work then by saying like and share, or, you know, like and share to win. They'll like it and they'll share it. They still didn't read it. They still didn't book it or buy it, okay? So you're actually faking your own metrics now, saying we have great reach. Yeah, it hit lots of news feeds, but they didn't consume it. So what you want is people to consume your content, engage with your content. And engagement is measured not just in likes and comments and shares anymore. That is not your only measurement of engagement. Engagement is now who watched your video past 3 seconds, who watched your video past 10 seconds, who stopped scrolling. Now, the platforms don't share all those insights with you. They do share who watched video past a certain amount. You won't know who scrolled and then stopped on your post. Just hovered, took it in, thought, and then kept scrolling. You don't get that. The platforms know it, but you don't get to know that. Engagement can be that they watched a video, that they sent you a message, that they screenshotted and shared it with their friends. Now, I did an experiment on my own newsfeed a few months ago, where every time an ad for a certain, it was hotels, every time an ad for a hotel hit my newsfeed, I screenshot it. I mean, a sponsored Facebook ad, okay? And sometimes I knew that I had been on that hotel's website, or I had been in that hotel. Sometimes I knew very clearly why it was in my newsfeed. But the more that I screenshot hotel ads only, my newsfeed was absolutely flooded with almost every Facebook ad in a day, and I get a lot of ads because I'm very responsive to them, was for hotels. I'd say every hotel that was using Facebook ads hit my newsfeed at some stage for about a week. And then I stopped it and it went back to the normal occasional amount. So I think they are measuring screenshots as a form of engagement. You have an interest in this if you're screenshotting it. It's just something that I did in my own newsfeed, followed my own activity, and there was an enormous spike in the amount. I need to do it again with a completely different product to see. But it definitely wasn't just my imagination. And it wasn't just, that they had retargeted because I hit their website or checked in or anything like that. So back to what to post. Bear in mind what you engage with. Follow your own behavior as a user before you try and become a great publisher. And say, what stops my thumb when I'm scrolling along mindlessly? And we all do it. Whether we work in social media, whether we have a business and are trying to market on social media, any social media user, watch them. And they're everywhere. I mean, they're at everywhere now. There's nowhere it's socially unacceptable to have your phone out. That's a good thing or a bad thing. But watch people and see and watch yourself. What stops their thumb? If you see image after image after image after image and then video, it doesn't even mean that the video is exceptionally brilliant. It's just that your eyeballs go, oh, what's that? It's moving, okay? In a nanosecond, and you make a decision to stop scrolling. Now, if the video is crap, you keep scrolling. But you make a decision in the first couple of seconds of that video as to whether you're going to keep watching it or not. There are some videos that you've seen lots of times, but still when it comes up in your feed, you'll watch it again. There are other videos that are really important and you should be watching them, but you're not because they didn't catch your attention in the first few seconds. There are some that the way that people make them annoys me. So I actually tune out as to what the content of it was because the format they do it in drives me crazy. Like people who start with 10 or 12 seconds of the video being, hi, you guys, I just wanted to pop on because I just want, okay, that's all about you and what you just want, and putting on a squeaky voice that's not theirs, mannerisms that are not really theirs. They're copying from someone else who has internet success. So they think that maybe the squeaky voice is what's going to get them followers, or they're mimicking the wrong things from good content. That kind of stuff makes me just scroll past. They could be about to tell me the meaning of life. They could be about to give me a free product. It doesn't matter. I don't make it to what they have to say. So be careful that you don't begin video content with your own self-consciousness and nerves. Practice that. Practice getting to the point early in the video because you don't have someone's attention for very long. Oh, I can see people's names on comments again. That's good. Kathleen says, great tips. Thanks, Kathleen. So the type of content, photos and videos is the obvious thing. Square photos, vertical videos, and not too much text on them. So there is a kind of an unwritten rule that no more than 20% of an image should be covered by text to perform well on Facebook and Instagram. So 20% of the pixels being covered up by text. And it recognizes text, so you can't fool this stuff, okay? I would say at this stage, even if 50% of the image was covered in text, but it's only a few words. So we take that one as an example. Take that as an example. I'm not asking for your attention for very long to read those, okay? So there's definitely more than 20% of the pixels covered by text, but there's still only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words, okay? So I'm kind of getting to the point pretty quickly. It's Instagram, it's for small business. This is not what I would deliver for, somebody who has a massive budget and huge targets to hit. This is for small businesses who are trying to give this stuff a go themselves. And then obviously my logo, because I'm aware there's other people doing this kind of stuff, and I want to make sure that people know that this was my Facebook Live. If I compare that to something that covers the same amount of pixels with text, but it's teeny tiny text, and you're trying to get people on their mobile to consume this stuff, and it hurts my eyes. Now, the fact that I've been screenshotting them for this thing I'm about to put together as to what not to do and what to do instead, I'm getting more and more of them in my feed, because back to my theory about screenshots, Facebook now thinks this is my favorite kind of content, is stuff that actually makes me want to cry. So keep the text to a minimum. To totally contradict that, when you make videos that are not just stories or live videos off the cuff, but when you're actually creating videos to publish that you want to stick around for a while, they need captions. Now, there are lots of free apps and different ways to do that, but you really do need to caption your videos, because no matter how brilliant your delivery is, people don't have the sound up. And again, watch your own behavior. Anything I'm telling you here is not something I've made up, is not something that is designed to shock you. Some of it, it's a realization where you go, oh yeah, I do that too. Watch your own behavior, watch your partner, watch your kids, watch your colleagues, watch your customers. People walk around watching videos, but with the sound down. If you've got headphones in on public transport, that's probably the only time where you would watch several videos in a row. And even then, people tend to have kind of a podcast or music on, because they know they've got a chunk of time to use their ears for one piece of content, or one at least long form piece of content. So people's video behavior is that they will watch it. They prefer a human face delivering something, but they also won't stick with a human face for too long. They won't stick with anything for too long. Their brain wants a distraction. Okay, what now? What now? What now? Entertain me. Last night we watched a YouTube video of like a montage of the intros from 80s cartoons. And it was very nostalgic and brilliant. And I knew all the words and sang along because, why not? But what I really thought interesting was some of them were over a minute long. And that was just the intro song to the cartoon. And we sat through that as kids. It's nothing to do with attention spans of different generations or so. We've almost hardwired our brains now into, right, what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next. So my kids watch Netflix or YouTube and are just waiting for the skip intro. They're definitely up there with the skip ad. They're definitely not watching the ads. But even the skip intro, the kind of catchy songs, and it was really a cartoon in itself at the beginning of kids' TV years ago. And they don't have that. And even when we were watching them last night and we had chosen to watch this content, it was like, yeah, I'm going to the next one and on to the next one. I can't get to the end of content quickly enough. And I want to skip through and I want to tap through and I want to know what's next. And it's just the way behavior is. So you can't bore people with your content. What works in stories then? Stories is very much, it's down to what your taste is, okay? Now, I'm going to share, I recorded me using stories just for a couple of minutes this morning, just so that there was a variety of this is this kind of post, this kind of post in stories. I'm going to share that screen with you now. I'm presuming most people watch stories daily and just don't use it. This is not going to cooperate now, of course. Here we go. Okay, so let me just check that's sharing. No, still me. Okay, so to go along the various stories, I'm scrolling across the top. Now, I follow about 1,900 accounts, and I never, ever, ever make it to the end of stories, right? As in, I couldn't watch all the stories I follow in a day. Even if I did nothing else and I sit on my phone and watch story after story after story, I would never make it to the end of them. So there's more minutes and hours of stories being published than there are in the day. So no user is going to see everyone that they follow. Okay? So it's back to this algorithm. So how does Instagram decide who they're going to put it in front of? They have to go on things like what you're interested in. So if there's somebody I watch every day, they will always be there in my top few. It used to be when it started that if you published to stories, you kind of got bumped up the queue. So somebody has a new frame in their stories, they get bumped up. It couldn't possibly be like that forever though, because even if somebody published every half an hour all day long, just to be at the top of the queue, that's not enough. So it's a bit of that. It's a bit of who has new content in their stories. It's a bit of what hashtags are they using. It's a bit of who else watches them. So if I have lots of people in my Instagram community, so people who follow me, people who I follow, people, connected to me. And remember, this is owned by Facebook. Don't question for a second that they know everything. It's also where we are. I'm sure of it, because I travel around a lot doing training. And if I'm in Galway, if I'm in Athlone, if I'm in Dublin, if I'm in Belfast, wherever I am, I will see accounts that I forgot I was even following, right? Who I haven't seen in ages. I haven't, been doing searches for them. I haven't made my way over to them through some link. But coming up towards the first few stories, encouraging me to watch them today, are ones that are local to me right then, because my GPS is saying this is where I am. And if I've published to my stories, I've probably tagged a location like the hotel that we're in or something like that, that has told the Instagram machine, this Instagram user is here and is active. So it would probably enjoy watching stories of people nearby. Okay. I see people who are at the same conference as me. I see people who I don't even know at all. Don't know how I'm following them, but I did at some stage, and there they are. And when I see, why are you there? I don't watch you every day. And I realize that, oh, okay, you're only about a mile away. So location matters, how interested people are in that type of content matters. And then what seems to matter the most, though, is that I regularly watch them. So your favorites will be towards the top of the queue. So how do you become one of somebody's favorites? I mean, you can't control all the time who you're close by to, but you can certainly let the Instagram machine know by tagging locations regularly in your stories. When you do that, you show up in what is called the location story for that place. So if I tag, let's say last Friday, I delivered a workshop in the Farnham Estate in Cavan, and I tagged it as a location. And then what we did was we searched out Cavan. I went to the story for Cavan. So you put Cavan in the search box or wherever. And then you go to places. So it will give you the top search results, the latest search results, accounts with that in their name, and places. You go to places. Everywhere within Cavan on the map, all the locations that have been tagged in stories in the last 24 hours show up in what's called a Cavan story. So if I tag Farnham Estate, I'm coming up in the Cavan story. If I go into the Cavan story, I see people who have posted to their story, and tagged a location within Cavan. That's a great way to find who to follow, see what's happening locally, message people, comment on their stories, engage with local people, especially for small business. It's so crucial that you engage locally. So to go back to what's happening in stories then. So just to go back a little bit, that's where I was scrolling along, and the one I decided to go into then is one that I generally would watch most days. I would watch Grace. I really enjoy her content. She does a lot of talking to camera, and she is one of these, some people would say, oversharers, where she shows, she documents her whole day. You don't have to be that level of sharer. It's totally fine to do whatever you're comfortable with. But the more that you do that, the more that people feel they have this close relationship with the people behind the business. And that could be really important. What I'm doing there now is I'm swiping across, and that moves me into the next story. So when I've had enough of watching somebody for whatever reason, I may come back and watch it later. Maybe I can't turn up the sound right now. I will swipe past somebody into the next one. Now, the next one happens to be a sponsored ad. So you can see the sponsored word on just under his username. And that means that he has used his Facebook ads account to show more people his content, and he's chosen Instagram as one of the placements for that ad. So your Facebook ads can show up on Instagram. They can show up on Instagram alone, they can show up on Facebook alone, or they can show up on both. Now, there's an example of content that was created with Instagram stories in mind. Now, we've no way of knowing how this person has designed the ad, but I do see ads, sponsored Instagram stories all the time, where it was clearly designed to be a Facebook post looking ad, and it doesn't fit properly. Whereas this is designed, like I said earlier, vertical portrait, where it fills my screen, okay? There is text over it, but he's not asking me to read 200 words in teeny tiny font. He's just got what is his message, his name, that it's the debut album, and he's put in that swipe up and that big arrow, because the swipe up and little arrow that Instagram gives me wouldn't be obvious on a white background. So that's quite a very well designed ad, I would say. And I've never heard of that artist before. I don't follow him, so I don't know what way I've been targeted there. But he reckons, or Instagram reckons, or whatever, that I might like to swipe up and hear that music and possibly even buy the album. So that's an ad that doesn't bother me. It's not something I'm annoyed by seeing. And whether I take that call to action or not is always a gamble for an advertiser as to whether people are going to do it or not. But I think design-wise, as an ad, it's quite good. So that was the next thing. And then I swiped past that into, okay, so this is the Style Fairy, a great blogger. She blogs about all sorts of fashion, parenting, interiors, everything. So there's an example of a very staged, styled picture. She's not showing me her messy room. It is clearly set up to take that picture. And she's going to talk us through, she's been talking her followers through the interiors of her new home, and including her home office. So this is the new shade. Now, she has added in that new shade by just posting the picture, but then just before you post it to stories, you just tap on your screen and it'll give you options to put these kind of text over them. Put in emojis, change the font, change the color, draw that little arrow with your finger. It makes it a little bit more playful, okay? And that's the kind of thing I'm saying is where Instagram stories is that little bit more raw and not as perfect as the news feed. So what would belong really in the news feed would be just a square image of that gorgeous office. Whereas the stories adds in this kind of playful element where there's a bit of text overlay, emojis, GIFs, drawing a little arrow, you know, that kind of thing. Along the top of the screen, you can see little dashes, okay? So that is kind of each frame, if you like, of the story. So if you look at somebody's story and they've only got 2 dashes across the top of the screen, there's only 2 frames and then you're going to be on to the next person. If you see like almost like a perforated line where there's, you know, 50 little white dashes across the top of the screen, you know that person is trying to keep your attention for quite a while. And it's sometimes that's what puts people off watching your story is, Jesus, I'm going to be here all day, and they'll just swipe past. And that's, like I was saying earlier about getting to the point in a video. If you've got that many frames in a story, what could you possibly have to say in a 24-hour period that is going to keep somebody watching? Now, maybe you do. Maybe it was like the most exciting day of your life. Maybe you're at the Oscars, okay? Maybe there is something incredible in every single frame. But as small businesses, the chances are you only need 4 or 5 frames in a 24-hour period, and that's fine. And if you start putting in too many things in stories, nobody's going to make it to the end. And it's a waste of time. And the thing that small businesses are short on the most is time. So if nobody sees the last 3, 4, 5, you know, you will see the number of viewers in the bottom left of your screen when the story has been up. And you will see that it declines. There are never the same amount of viewers in the last one as there were in the first one, as in the last frame of the same story as the first one, because people do swipe past. But you don't have to take offense to that, and you don't need to think that that's a failure. That is just what we do. And watch your own behavior. It could be your best friend, and you just don't make it to the end of their story because you just, yeah, next, 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 okay? So back to these stories. So she's given us a clearer look at this shade that she wants to talk about. And I don't know if you can notice the hashtag AF. And I don't mean that she's hidden it or anything. It's just that during that frame, it's on a white background. Hashtag AF means that it's an affiliate link. So if you are to click through, it's going to, the person is going to get a small commission on the fact that you bought it through their link. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but they are supposed to declare it, and Naomi has. And if she says ad, it means that there's a paid collaboration in some way between her and the brand that she's promoting. Now, that's an example of, it's a square post that would look perfect in the news feed. And in stories, it doesn't look completely terrible. I mean, it's a great photo for a start, but it doesn't look completely terrible, but it's still not filling my screen, okay? So it's up to you whether something is worth putting in stories and think, okay, do I need to stretch this out and make it a full screen picture, or will I just stick it up anyway? So it depends on what the photo is. But if you've had a plan in mind when you're creating content, there's one that is a landscape picture popped into stories. So you see the way it's just not quite as immersive as when somebody has actually created for stories with a vertical format. And my internet's decided to just slow down. Okay. So the next one along is a much more polished, professional looking ad. I'm going to go back to that again. So many obviously have a budget like you don't, okay? As a small business, you don't have a creative department and, you know, all the stuff that many would have. But they have the same challenge as you of trying to capture people's attention, reach out to the right kind of demographic, and get their stuff seen, okay? Now, you see the way they've played around with a kind of a collage there of various things. That does capture my attention visually. And there are apps that can do that. And with a little bit of creativity, you don't have to have Minnie's creative department or anybody's big budgets. There's an app called Unfold that is really good for making those kind of collages that can be a mixture of images and video. You can have a nice colored background. You can keep it on brand. And if you've got 3 or 4 pictures that you wanted to share in your stories today, and none of them fit stories properly, or you think that people don't watch 3 or 4 slides of just images, they won't make it to picture 3 or 4, make a collage of them. Just have one slide in your stories with the various pieces of content all in there, and then they all get seen, but you weren't asking people for too much of their time or attention. And that app is free. It's called Unfold. It is on iPhone and Android. It's free to a point, and then some of the templates are like $3 or $4, but it's not expensive, and it's not a constant monthly subscription. So it's really useful. So back to what else stories can look like. Now, this was just a random selection this morning. I literally just scrolled through stories for a while, but when you do that, you will always see the same mix of people doing it right, people doing it wrong, people doing it professionally, amateurs, your friends, everybody giving it a go. So there's one that did make me stop and read this morning, because I saw this human being. Now that I didn't read, and that's the kind of thing I'm saying, I'm not going to stop when I'm watching Instagram stories and read all that. I'm just not. I'm aware that there's something going on there with that magazine, but I'm not going to read all that text. Okay. So, it could just be that you're actually not even in your business today. So, there's Edwina gone off training, always bettering herself, doing the best for her business and her customers. And people forget to take pictures of what they're doing when they're out and about and post them. And that is interesting to me that she's done that, It's not going to mean I'm going to spend lots of money with her right now today, but it means she's shown up in my stories in an interesting way to me. As you can see, in just what I recorded of 3 minutes of watching stories this morning, I had several sponsored ads just in that time frame. So your company credit score, see how lenders, suppliers and customers see you. To find out, visit Credit Safe today for a free trial. So obviously they're aiming that at business people, and that makes sense to put it in my feed. Again, whether I take the call to action or not is up to lots of other factors. Aidan is fitting out his home office, and I love seeing those kind of progress shots where I don't just see the picture perfect finish, I actually see the thing as it's evolving. So, and yet another ad. There's lots of variety there in what I'm watching. And I watch stories, and everybody watches stories much more than they scroll that feed. They scroll that feed mindlessly, take in very little, throw out a few likes, and then go back to giving stories their attention. So while the feed is important to keep some presence there and keep it on brand, it is just so much more important that you're showing up in stories, because that's where the customer's attention is. And at the end of the day, that's what we want, is the customer's attention, okay? So how do you grow who's watching your Instagram? Growing followers authentically is the only thing I will recommend. I will never recommend things that will get you to what you think is the end goal, which is a number, quickly. It takes time, and it is frustrating, and it is a challenge. But that's okay, because good things always are, right? If you get messages or comments showing up offering you 1,000 followers for X number of dollars, or click here to find out more about how to gain, how to hit 10,000 followers, they're scams. They haven't been policed on Instagram as well as they have been on Facebook, and I don't know why. It's better now than it was, and it's getting better all the time. But for some reason, Instagram was full of spam bots that knew if you used a hashtag, for example, small business or local business, or, you know, Irish Biz Party that a lot of us would use to connect with other small businesses. I don't know if Irish Biz Party specifically was a target, but I just mean hashtags related to topics where they know, okay, small businesses are always struggling to get followers. They jump on those kind of accounts. They know the accounts that were recently set up. They know the accounts that have under a certain number of followers. They know the accounts that are using certain hashtags, and they jump on those with these spam messages offering you what looks like it's too good to be true, and it is. And even when it works, you pay your $50, you get up to 10,000 followers. Brilliant. We're now better than the competitors. Our customers think we're great. We can have swipe up links in our stories if we have 10,000 followers or more. But Instagram then crawls their platform and shuts that stuff down, shuts your account down for breaking their terms of service, which is that you won't buy your followers like that. The followers that you buy in that form are not real accounts. Okay, so you're paying somebody who has thousands and thousands and thousands of fake accounts set up, and this is where they're trying to catch it. Instagram is they're trying to catch them at the point of setting up fake accounts. If I have 10,000 fake accounts and I have software that they can all go and follow the same person today, you pay me $50, all 10,000 of my fake accounts are on like 10,000 devices set up in a room somewhere, and they're all programmed to just follow this, now follow this, now follow this. And it's all fake. And it is so damaging to your brand if your customer sees that the audience, the following, the community that you say that you've built is actually a load of fake accounts. It's just so damaging. So not only are you fooling yourself into thinking, yay, we have swipe up links now, or we're better than a competitor, or we're whatever, you're also going to damage it, really damage it long term, where people see that you're up to that kind of scam artistry. So stay away from them. Just ignore them if they pop up in comments, and block them if they're messaging you. So the authentic ways to grow followers. I think a really useful thing to do is spend some time every day. And until this becomes a habit, it can be something you might have to set a reminder for, or something to make yourself do it. And search out keywords to do with your business. See, are there hashtags around them? Then go and see who's posting using those hashtags. Follow those people if they seem relevant. Now, if you're a local business and you have no intention of exporting, or no resources to export, or having lots of followers in New York is of no use to you, and there seems to be lots of people in the States using a certain hashtag or whatever, and following them is not necessarily going to bring you what you want, which is the right people to follow you back. Okay, so maybe keep it local. Go and do that search for your catchment area. Okay, and that could be several counties in Ireland, it could be all of Ireland. But by going and seeing, okay, who is posting tagging a certain location, who is posting using a certain hashtag, who is involved in this kind of stuff, what are the indicators for who would be a good customer for you? Is it that they have a certain problem? Is it that they have a certain lifestyle? Is it that they're in a certain area? Figure out who your customer is first, and then think, how would they use Instagram? Then go and search out those things and follow people. And I have a great rate on Instagram of people following back when I do this on anybody's account. So I think a lot of businesses freak out at the thoughts of following a person and think that that's really invasive, and that somebody doesn't want to be followed by a brand. Yeah, they do. They want to be followed by as many people as they can. And unless it's a really offensive brand or a sensitive material that you deal with, like if you have, if you're selling something to do with, I don't know, say bladder control or something, and you're going following people, that might be something that they would take offense to. Or, if it was something where you're implying that they're the one with a certain problem, you'll have to err on the side of caution. But the vast majority of these small businesses need to just reach out to local accounts, need to just reach out to people who are parents or are small businesses or whatever it is that your target audience looks like. Do more following and you'll get followers back. Whatever you do then, don't do this crack of unfollow them as soon as they follow you. So people to me all the time, if I do this follow hoping they're going to follow back, should I unfollow them straight after? That picture gone grainy. Don't know why. I think it's really, really rude when somebody follows me, I follow them back. And instead of that being the start of a beautiful relationship, it's where they say, right, you've done what I wanted you to do now, goodbye, and they unfollow. I absolutely hate it. Some people use bots to do it for them. Avoid at all costs. What you're trying to do here is actually connect with people and start a relationship. You want them to be commenting on your stories next week so that now it's a message conversation. You want them to remember you sell this thing, where you are and what you're about. You want them to get a sense of who you are behind your business through stories, through good content, through engagement, through responses to engagement. You don't want to give them the impression that all you wanted was their follow and now they're not good enough for you. Goodbye. That's nonsense. The other thing about growing followers is if you have a decent relationship with a business or a blogger or someone who has an account with lots of followers, you can collaborate. Now, if there's payment changing hands and control over what they're going to post for you, that's a paid partnership. That's a business deal in itself. And it needs to be declared as such according to the ASAI, the Advertising Standards Authority of Ireland. But even if it's just that your friend is going to give you a shout out, and say, I all think you should follow this person, and they tag you on screen and maybe point to it or whatever. Maybe run a competition where there's a giveaway if they come over and follow you. Use someone else's following if you've got a good relationship with that person or a paid relationship with that person, whatever that looks like. But leverage someone else's following. If you're only starting off and finding it a struggle to get people to follow, that's fine. Nobody sees that as disingenuous or anything. Just be careful that their followers are the kind of followers you want. So, I mean, if you're a makeup artist and a beauty blogger gives you a shout out, you're laughing because it's people interested in beauty. Great. But what if that blogger is based in Dublin and you're in Leitrim and you can only serve the local area? How many of her followers that came over for this giveaway are actually going to book appointments with a makeup artist in Leitrim? So be careful that when you team up with collaborations, shout outs, giveaways, that they're bringing you the right kind of followers. I think it's better to stay with a low number of followers who are actually engaging with you and actually interested and viewing your stories and telling their friends about you than having this vanity metric of thousands and thousands and thousands of followers who have no real interest in what it is that you do. Or an interest in what you do, but you're just in the wrong place, or they have no intent to actually purchase your product. I'm going to finish up with hashtags. I know they confuse people, and really, if you haven't got a grip on what a hashtag is on any platform, they're the people I see just putting very weird things, a whole sentence as a hashtag. A hashtag is like a label for content, okay? And people will seek out a hashtag to see what's there under, travel, or, we'll say when the big snow was there, that there could be a hashtag to do with that. It's just to keep everything together as a kind of a collection, so that when somebody is seeking out that kind of content, they can just have a stream of all the same thing. So you can use up to 30 hashtags in an Instagram post. I think if you put 30 hashtags in the caption of a post, it looks tacky. Okay? So a little tip is write the caption of your picture or video in the news feed now I'm talking about. And thank you, Dave. And then go full stop, enter, full stop, enter, full stop, enter to move your cursor down a few spaces. Okay? And then paste in your 30 hashtags. And then at least when I'm scrolling through the feed, I'm not seeing the clutter of 30 hashtags. It looks a little bit desperate. It works. Hashtags work. You will get found. But I just think it looks a little bit needy and desperate and tacky and visually not great, cluttered. You can put hashtags in the comment, the first comment either. And then in stories, you can only use one hashtag on your stories. And I think it's to make sure that we're not cluttering up this screen with tons and tons and tons of hashtags. So you can get found through a hashtag in your stories as well. And when you've only got one that you're allowed to use, you'll get a lot more picky and a lot more, that's the one. That's the one I want to be found on, not here's 30 and sure we'll see what sticks. Another tip for the up to 30, doesn't have to be 30, is to just have a note on your phone with them saved there so that you can just copy and paste, because it's very hard to remember or type out without misspelling lots of different hashtags when you're posting. So maybe have up to 30 saved as a note somewhere on your phone that you can just copy and paste that in when you're posting your caption. One last thing on hashtags, and then I'm going to wrap this up. There are what's called shadow banned hashtags. So this is where Instagram have realized that there were people kind of tricking the system and using hashtags as a way to get their spam bots seen, or these kind of people who will sell you 10,000 followers and all this kind of crap. There's also hashtags around abusive content or offensive content, as in violence or nudity or online abuse, as well as, scams, pyramid schemes, all sorts of dodgy stuff. I mean, it's something that's very hard for them to police. They never publish a list of what hashtags they see as the bad ones. But there is a list somewhere, like a secret sauce, of hashtags that will get you what they say shadow banned. So that means you're not banned, your account's not shut down, you don't get any warning, but they stop showing you to your followers if you use certain hashtags. Now, I don't have a list. If you Google shadow banned hashtags, you will get a list that's not confirmed by Instagram to be true. It's people figuring this stuff out from testing. But what I will say is, if the hashtags sound like spam, they will be shadow banned. Things like follow for follow, things like Instagram follow pod, I think was one of them. Anything that sounds like a get rich quick scheme, anything that sounds like, millionaire lifestyle, this kind of false promises that a lot of people post on Instagram, where they're just trying to take people's money and there is no product at the end of it. So anything that sounds dodgy, sounds spammy, and doesn't sound on brand for your lovely business, don't include them. You probably will grow likes and follows through them because so many people are wrapped up in these schemes, but you will damage yourself long term because Instagram will stop showing you, will just cut way down on your reach. And essentially the only people seeing you will be people searching out those dodgy hashtags, which are scam artists. So keep it authentic, keep it real, keep it local, and definitely keep it human. And you should be well on your way to Instagram success this year, once you just give it time and stay consistent. I hope those tips were useful. I do offer Instagram training where I go much deeper on all these topics with you one-to-one like this through a screen, and share my Instagram screen with you online, live, just me and you or the team in your business. I'll put a link to that in the comments if anybody's interested in going deeper on this stuff. And I will have a more substantial Instagram course ready whenever I can actually find the time to build it. Every time I go to do it, something else comes up, and that's a good complaint. I like being busy, I like being booked out, but it is hard to get this online course fully made. So that's why I said I would jump on and do this instead of putting it off much longer, because people have questions, people are afraid to get started, and unless you get started, you don't know how to get better. My Instagram is at @BreffneyDigital. If anybody wants to follow me, I will follow you back. And just don't unfollow me then straight after, and we should all be good. And other than that, I will see you again soon. Bye.